How's everybody doing? Can you get a thumbs up? Everybody still okay? There are lots of cookies over there. All right. We have come to the final portion of our agenda, and then you are free to enjoy the heat of Texas. And the last portion is going to be a monitoring update. So again, reflecting back on why do we have monitoring well networks? How do we measure water well levels? What's the implication of all of that? Reach back, all the way back to 9 a.m. this morning when we talked about groundwater science and thinking about the importance of all of that. Fortunately, we've got Bobby Bazan and Ralph Sifuentes here to give us an update locally about what's happening. So let's welcome them to the stage to hear our final presentation.
Thank you. All right, so y'all get to listen to me again to close out the day. Hopefully we can get you out of here a little earlier than 4 o'clock. I don't anticipate being too long because I get, as you just were able to witness a little bit ago, a little quick-winded here and talking kind of fast. But if y'all have any questions in this, I hope to make this a little bit more informal. So if you have questions in the middle of it, please go ahead and raise your hand. Again, I don't think this is going to take till 4, but if it does, because there's questions, I'll be okay with that. I'm here to answer as many questions as you guys have to answer. So quickly through our presentation, we'd like to go is, what is the monitoring network? In order for us to get to where we want to go with this network, we have to be able to tell you where we've been. Why does that monitoring network matter? Where is it now? Where do we plan to take it? How was that data collected? Because a lot of times that's a big question that a lot of people have is, how do we actually go in there and measure a water level? And then when do we collect it and why do we collect it then? So the monitoring network, pretty simply, is a series of wells which are measured for water levels. We have a couple of wells throughout the district. Each of the formations that are in Milam and Burleson counties, that's the Carrizo Wilcox, the Queen City, Sparta, and the Yoa Jackson as well. Each of those, and the Brazos River alluvium, each of those formations do have a monitoring well located within it. The map here, you're right, kind of shows what that current distribution of wells are. Most of these wells are volunteered by well owners. It means somebody has a well on their property that they've called us and said, hey, we would like to have our water level measured. Then we'll come out there and we'll definitely advise by that and more than happy to do that for people. A majority of these wells were actually, when the district first started, we didn't really have a whole lot of monitoring. The state, Texas Water Development Board, actually did a lot of the measuring of water levels, not just here in Post Oak, Savannah, or Milam, Burleson County, but around the state. But as we all know, funding in the state has kind of dwindled in that. Their staff has kind of dwindled. They don't really have the resources to do it much more. So when groundwater conservation districts became more involved with the groundwater science, groundwater districts have slowly taken over the duties or the responsibilities of collecting this data. So we took over, I believe it was in 2007. It was 2007. Y'all saw Drew Golson up here earlier in the day, I guess at lunchtime. Drew Golson actually started working with the conservation district when he was still a master's student at Texas A&M. And he was the one who kind of started slowly building this monitoring network. And we've slowly added to it, added more wells. And we've also taken some of the old converted oil and gas wells and we've actually turned those into deep monitoring wells, because it turns out it's cheaper to plug a deeper well back to a shallower level than it is to actually drill down to 2,000, 2,800, 3,000 feet. So that's kind of why we kind of use those oil and gas wells for those deeper Simsboro monitoring wells. So why is it important? It's as simple as good science is good management. Without that science, you don't have the management. Our district rules are developed because of what we've seen through our monitoring network, our district management plan, and then also the regional and state water plans. You heard a lot of people up here earlier today, so I don't need to go into complete detail. But from the very beginning of the morning, you heard Robert Mace was up here talking about how water levels are necessary in order to help develop the models. Well, all those models go into helping to develop our management plan, developing our rules, developing the regional plans. You heard the GMA, the district manager, general managers for each of the surrounding GCDs in GMA 12 up here talking about our monitoring protocols and establishing DFCs and how do we do that. Well, all of this data that's actually from users and well owners like yourselves that have this well, this is an opportunity for y'all to have the input into the data that actually goes into building these well, or into developing our rules, developing our management plans, and the models that are eventually used to do all of these state water plans. So it is, it is imperative that we get you guys to help us with this. I mean, I know I sound like a broken record every time I come up here, every time I go out and I talk to y'all, I seem to be asking for monitoring wells. But like I said, the reason for that is because it is important, because our management plan relies on the best data available that we can get. The more points, the more data, the better our management can be. So today, you saw the map a little while ago, we're at 112 wells currently, kind of growing that slowly and surely. All wells are measured at least once annually. We have 16 wells that are measured continuously. When we say continuously, that means they're measured on once an hour with pressure transducers that are left in the well itself. Usually it's in non-pumping wells, but we do have a couple of them in some wells that do pump. And then again, each of those 7 formations are monitored, but we are lacking some coverage. As you can see, we go back to the well. Down here especially, we have the Yowa-Jackson Aquifer down in southern Burleson County. We only have 5 wells that cover that entire area. It's a formation that is tight, and you go from 1 mile to the next mile, or 1 acre to the next acre, and it varies so much that 5 monitoring wells within that formation doesn't get us a good idea of what's actually happening in that formation. So if we can add more wells into that area, that would help us. That's where we plan to go with this. We heard also earlier today about how important the shallow Carrizo Wilcox is, because there's some large permits that would be producing some water from the deep Simsboro down in Burleson County. Well, some of the demonstrations or some of the presentations that y'all saw today said that, well, where some of those impacts can be felt probably aren't really in the deep area, but in the shallow zones, in the shallow formations where those aquifers outcrop at the surface, and that is along that corridor where you kind of see these higher concentrations, but as you can see, there's still some gaps that we would like to be able to fill out. So the board earlier this year actually challenged me and challenged my position to actually build on the number of wells. So by the end of the summer of this year, so summer of 2017, we were tasked to find 50 additional wells with a focus mainly on that shallow Carrizo Wilcox area. We have taken some leverage with that and actually added some of those 50 in other formations as well. So every formation was lacking and needs to be developed better with the monitoring system. But we are adding 50 additional wells by the end of this summer. We want to increase the frequency of measurements. Right now, I mentioned that we do this once annually. We would like to be able to go up to quarterly, maybe even on a monthly basis if necessary. We'd also like to increase the number of continuous measurement wells from 16 to, I believe the number was to add an additional 25 more transducers out there so that we can see that data on a more continuous or on a more, a smaller span. And then we'd also like to improve our data sharing, collaboration with our neighboring districts. I mean, they were up here talking, how can we be more alike, or how do we know what's happening in the neighboring districts? Well, as you saw the maps earlier, the red map that was shown with the major aquifers, the Carrizo Wilcox doesn't stop as soon as you cross the Burleson County line. It doesn't stop once you cross the Brazos River going toward College Station. It continues. So in order to make better maps of what's actually happening with drawdown and water levels, we need to be able to know what's also happening across the Brazos River. What's happening on the other side in Lee County and Bastrop County. That helps us make our drawdown maps or our water level maps a lot better. So we do collaborate with those neighboring districts. And then one last thing is we'd like to increase the interface that we have with the public. So we're going to be rolling out, and obviously I don't know how to spell, it's a web-based, not a web-based, but a web-based data interface. It'll be a mapping service, and I'll give y'all a little demonstration about that, of what that's going to look like here after a little bit. But as you can see, that's a lot for just me, myself, to be able to take on. As much as I love to be out in the field, my job also requires me to be in the office quite a bit too, also looking at permits. And you heard just a little while ago about the groundwater well assistance program that the district is looking to roll out. You might have heard Stephen Weiss throw me under the bus there and say that I'm going to be running a lot of that. So it requires, a lot of help for me. It's not, I won't be able to do this on my own. So the district said that, we can get Bobby some help. And we were fortunate. We flew a position for a part-time field tech, and we were very, very fortunate that the first application that came through our door or on our email servers was the man here, my left, Ralph Sifuentes. I'll let him introduce himself a little bit, but he's actually going to help us develop our monitoring program quite a bit. He has tremendous amount of experience. Garrett kind of told you a little while ago, my background is, I studied hydrology at Texas A&M. I worked with the Forest Service and groundwater dependent ecosystems. I've done this kind of work before, so I am new to it, or do have some experience in it. But I'm still young and still learning a lot. Ralph has been doing this work for quite a bit and has a lot more experience than I have, and I look forward to learning from him any little I can, but I'll let him kind of introduce himself and what he used to do and what he's going to bring to the district.
All right. Thank you, Bobby. Well, I'm Ralph Sifuentes, and you'll probably see me along with Bobby maybe come to your house to check your well or monitor wells. If you're on a monitoring program, I'll be coming along and visiting you or whatever goes on in the business, daily work of our business. But my background is I'm a boots on the ground type of guy. Started as a driller, kind of metamorphosed into an electric log. If you're familiar with electric log, that's, you come in with a probe, you log the well, after you drill it, you log the exploration hole. I drilled the hole and I would back the truck up and log the hole also. I did a lot of that and metamorphosed into, with Alcoa, as a drilling supervisor, groundwater supervisor. I've put in a lot of wells. I've overseen a lot of wells. I've spent a lot of graveyard shifts watching wells go in. We put in 2-inch monitor wells. We've gone up to 24-inch wells, steel wells, so I've seen them all. So that kind of would help. I believe that I'm able to complement Bobby's knowledge of the formations, and I'll be able to complement him as well as in the drilling aspect. And when the well's being drilled, is it being constructed correctly? Those type of things, and I'm familiar with the monitor program. Everything they're doing is I'm familiar with, so they're on a good track. And I wanted to say that being part of Post Oak Savannah Groundwater is a blessing to me, because they're a great group of people. They have your interest in mind. They want to do what's right, and that's what I've always done over the years. I do what's right. And the plugging program for wells that are abandoned or on your property, those are great proactive things. We want to be proactive, not reactive. To get out there and then you see something, call me and we'll go look at it and we'll determine what it is. If it's an abandoned well or whatever, we'll come look at it. But my years of experience goes into luminance. I ran their drilling program. I oversaw the installation of wells there also, into the Sinsboro, into the Carrizo, the Sinsboro. And so I've maintained wells. I've oversaw the maintenance crews to repair wells, pulling pumps, replacing pumps, water meters. pipeline repair, all things like that. I've done it. So I just feel like, again, honored to be part of the group, and we're just wanting to be able to help y'all. And as also it was mentioned, I've been involved in a mitigation program. That's what it was called for us, because we were required to RCT to mitigate wells. We impacted, I've talked to landowners. I've drilled a few wells for landowners. That's what we did. So anyway, just wanted to say that I've been around a good while, and I want to impart my knowledge to Bobby and just help the Post Oak Savannah continue on forward and do the best job we can for y'all. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Rep to help me be a little bit of down white here, if you don't mind, and get show you. So again, one of the biggest questions that we always get is, how do we measure wells? We have a couple of different methods that we use. I don't know if you've ever been able to walk the halls outside, but there's been a little bit of a video playing. We've had our video out on Facebook for a while that kind of goes over that a little bit. If you haven't been able to see it, but we always like to talk about it. So a couple of the methods that we use, we have 4 different methods, main methods that we use. The first one being the steel tape. Steel tape is probably the tried and true way. If you go out with Texas Water Development people, if you go out with USGS people, this is the method that they're using. Mainly because it's hard to get a steel well, steel tape stuck in a well. First of all, because you have a steel to pull up against. And 2, it really is the most accurate. So a lot of people, when they measure their own well, will either take a string and a nut or something like that, try to dip it into a well until they hear a splash, or maybe they'll stick it in until they know where they might hit the water. They'll pull it out and see how much of that nylon rope is wet or whatever. Similar concept with the steel tape. Steel tape goes into the well carefully. We don't just fish it in there. We slowly, manually feed it into the well. We use a non-toxic carpenter's chalk on there. We do sanitize that tape before we stick it into any well. But we mark it up with a non-toxic chalk on there. That blue chalk that's on there will basically show the water line when that tape hits the water. And it hits the water, we feed it back out, and it'll leave a line or an impression on that blue chalk. And we know that's where the level of where water is. We subtract that amount that's wet from the total amount of tape that we fed into the well. And that's how we get a reading. Fairly simple. Well, kind of simple, because really with the steel tape, if you don't know before you go out into the field or before you go measure a well, if you don't know what the water level there should be or is from either previous readings or from the models or whatever, you can be there for a little bit of time. Actually, Ralph and I went out to a well yesterday that I could have sworn I would have hit water before 90 feet, but it didn't happen. We hit it a little bit deeper, but we kept, you go 20 feet at a time until you finally hit that water, because you have 20 feet of blue chalked tape. So I think it took us, 5 tries before we finally hit water, Ralph? So you go in there several times until you hit that water. I mean, it really is a guess at first a lot of times. Once you finally know what it is, the next time we go out there, it'll be a lot simpler, I promise. We won't take 5 tries to find water. So after the steel tape, the other method that we use, and that's actually becoming quite common around the state just because it is a lot easier than the steel tape, not as heavy. You don't have to feed it in and feed it out before you know if you hit water or not. It's what we call an electric line or an E-line. The E-line is it's basically 2 conductors that are wrapped up in this in a cord or in a cable. When it hits the water, it'll sound off a beep, and that'll basically tell us that we've now hit water. The water, you can't use distilled water or fresh water, or I say fresh. What I mean by fresh water, I mean like something out of a jar or out of a jug, because it needs to have some kind of mineral in it. You heard David saying all of our water is mineralized. You have to have that in there for it to act as a conductor. When it acts as a conductor, it closes the loop, and that's when we hear that sound come off. On the side of that tape is the measurements. It's measured every it's every inch, or it's every foot, but then with every inch between that foot, so we're able to tell almost pretty much more immediate than with the tape where we hit water. So it's a lot easier to use. The one Ralph's got out here is a lot better because it is a narrow diameter, less chance of getting stuck. So I do pride myself on trying not to get stuff stuck in a well. But I can't stand here and lie to you and tell you it hasn't happened. But I can say my average is really, really, really good. I think in the 4.5 years that I've been working with the district, it has happened to me twice. So, and it's with the new well, with the new E-line that we have. It's actually a little bit bigger, has a couple of other weights on it. The weights are actually a good thing, and they're a bad thing when you're actually trying to get that E-line out of the well, because they can pinch in between the pump and the electric line that you have in the well, where they tape it up. You get it pitched in there, and there is no getting it out. The next thing we know, the driller's getting a call from Bobby for emergency rescue. But I try to minimize that as much as possible, I promise. We don't have one out here, but another technology that we do use is a sonic meter. It works like sonar in a submarine. I don't know if anybody here has ever been in the Navy and in a submarine. I know I haven't, but it emits a pulse, a sound pulse, and then it measures how long it takes to get back. A lot of people do use this, and this is a technology that is getting used around just irrigators or something like that do want to know where the water level is in their well. It's a technology that's widely becoming accepted. I personally don't use it as much here at the district, and I don't teach it to anybody else that we're using, mainly because it does require a lot of calibration. It's dependent. It's science, I know, and I'm not trying to bore you out here, but it requires temperature. Sound waves travel at different temperatures, at different speeds, and all that other stuff. And that goes into that, and that's why I try not to use it very often, because it does require a lot of calibration. Especially when you have a steel tape and you have an E-line that don't require calibration as much and are easier to use. But there are some wells that we just can't get into with the E-line or with the steel tape, so we do still have that available to us as a tool to acquire some data. And then the last one, those continuous method wells that we talked about, we use a pressure transducer, and it's small. It's about 3/4 of an inch in diameter. We do stick it in a well full time. We do have it on a cable that comes out to outside of the well. We're able to download that data outside of the well, so we don't have to be pulling it up and putting it back in the well every single time we're out there. It's just a quick connect to our computer, download the data from the surface, and we're out of there in like 5 minutes. It's pretty simple, pretty easy, but it does have a battery life, so we usually do have to change them out they should last 5 years, but it's anywhere from 3 to 5 years is what we normally find them working for. Again, on the wells that do have these pressure transducers in there, we still try to get the manual data just so that we can calibrate, make sure that, it's electronics, that you can get fluctuations and that, so we do try to calibrate that data to make sure that it does stay on. So those are the methods that we do use. With the pressure transducers, one of the things that we're trying to do here with growing our network, besides just adding the 50 wells, is adding 25 more wells that are going to give us that data, or that continuous hourly data. I'm going to kind of show y'all what that data looks like when we do get it. And it's what kind of gives us the idea of why do we only measure one time a year? I mean, well, shouldn't you be measuring more frequently or whatnot? Well, the truth is, from our data, we know that the aquifer has seasonal fluctuations. So this is data that we collected off of one of our wells that does have a continuous measurement off of it. This is a Simsboro well up between Rockdale and Caldwell on 908. But anyways, you can see that water levels rise and fall as the seasons fluctuate. And right around January, February is when you see that they are at their highest point. That's because the demand on the water is the lowest during those winter months. So those pumps turn off during the winter, or really right after the growing season. So around October, November, a lot of those pumps around the district shut off. That's when we see, so this is actually backwards, or think of it in backwards. That's distance to it. So those water levels start coming back up as soon as those pumps start turning off. And so we do get that recovery, and so we get what we call a stable water level. And that's why we go out in February and March to measure the wells that we measure manually on an annual basis, because that's when the water table or the water levels in the aquifer are at its lowest period. And a little bit more, I know I have another one here, but I just really quickly wanted to show you this because I actually collected this data the other day, and it was pretty fascinating to watch. So I know it looks blurry and whatnot. This is actually one of those wells, Southwest Milam well in Rockdale. It does pump. They do pump right next to it, actually. This well doesn't pump, but the well next to it does. And late last year, early this year, they actually went through a grant program. It wasn't one of our grant programs, but it was a grant program to fix one of their holding tanks, so they shut their pumps off. And you can see that during that period in our transducer data, it's kind of reflected those water levels. As soon as they turned those pumps off, those water levels started coming back up, and you can tell that they were down for 3 months. We didn't know the period that they weren't pumping at all. And as soon as they turn those pumps back on, you can see that it now varies again. So that's some of the data that we're able to get from those transducers. And we're going to want to be able to take this data and give it to you, the public. But we need some kind of form or interface to be able to do that. And so at our last board meeting, the board actually approved for us to enter into contract to have an online database developed and built by Half & Associates. Again, this is another way that we're going to be collaborating with our neighboring districts. 4 out of the 5 districts in GMA 12 are going to be using and sharing their data the exact same way that we will be doing once this comes online. So just another way that we're trying to show the state that we do a lot of things similarly. As much as we have our own rules and our own management plans, a lot of things that we do are similar. So on here, once this does come out, of course, Megan and all the wonderful job she does with our social media and outreach will send out a message, and we'll be able to show y'all or tell y'all when this is released. We're hoping either by the end of this year or early January of next year. Hopefully sooner than that, I bet. So this isn't in Burleson or Milam counties because, well, they don't have our data yet, and they're building that. This is over in, David, you might know this stuff because I think they kind of developed this demo based off of your data. East Texas is using their database, and this database has come out. So one of the things that they'll be able to do is take the data. You'll be able to see where the monitoring wells are. You can go on there, you can see your well. If your well is registered with the district, you'll be able to see where it's at. You'll be able to go and look at neighboring wells, which wells are near me. If I have a monitoring well next to me, you'll be able to go look up that monitoring well. Should be able to click on it, and it'll actually tell you what the water level readings were. So in this one, obviously, it just shows you a bar graph. We're actually going to change that so you can see a little bit better with the hydrographs. We do have a lot of wells that are going to have more data than this one well is showing. But this is going to be one of those highlights where we'll be able to take that data. So those transducers we'd also want to put them on telemetry, so on a cell phone basically chip. That data will then be able to come into us on a weekly or monthly basis, or even more frequently, even daily if we wanted it. And that way we can get that out to the public. The public will be able to go to this webpage. They'll be able to see what those water levels are almost instantaneously. So that's some of the things that we're looking forward to come forward here in the near future, hopefully, again, before the end of this year, and definitely by the beginning of next year. Again, I'm gonna put out a shameless plug out there. If any of y'all here have a well, y'all wanna have measured, Sarah said there was somebody that already came up earlier today. I appreciate that. If y'all can find me, find Ralph. If y'all afraid to come and talk to us today because we look like mean people, I promise you we're not. Or you can call the office, and we're always available. If we're not there at the office, Elaine, Gary, Megan, any of them can get that information to us. That we are looking for monitoring wells. We're looking for monitoring wells anywhere we can get them, so it's not just in the shallow Carrizo Wilcox. Even though if you have one of those, we are really interested in those. But if you have anywhere else in the district, we're interested in those as well. So don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Again, once that the groundwater well assistance program comes out, I believe one of the requirements is going to be that you have your well measured at least once or twice. And this is a good way to maybe get a head start on that or a jump on that. So please don't hesitate, come talk to us. We'd be more than willing to do that. If you got any other questions on plugging wells, groundwater water quality, I know we just had a water sampling campaign. We're looking to do that again next year and probably continuous on a yearly basis where we'll use the A&M lab and both A&M labs to do bacteriological, which is E. coli, and also do the cation, anions, and pH, everything else you may call it, with the A&M lab so that we can start building a water quality database and not just a water level or water quantity maps for y'all. And that way we can get more data or make more data available to the public. And with that, I'll close it up. If y'all have any questions, or I'll let Sarah ask if y'all have any questions.
Do you have any questions?
All right, yeah, yes, sir.
You all have maps. Do you have maps, current maps, that show where the different fields are in relationship to registered wells? Like, I have no idea where this ridge field is.
Okay. So the question is, do we have maps available? The answer is yes-ish. But the answer isn't easy either. So we do have a lot of those maps available in the office on paper, some of them. Some of them we have digitized, they just haven't been put anywhere on our website or easily accessible to the public. If you email them, we can definitely get them to you. The other thing is, we don't have anything available until this comes out. When this comes out, then all of that data is going to be easily accessible. You can call us and ask us which one and how do we get to that. But until this becomes available, right now it's, hey Bobby, where are those wells located? Do you have that available? I'll say send an email to Gary. Gary will let me release that data to you, and you'll have it. But we do have the data available. Yes, sir. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
How much does a pressure transducer cost?
How much does a pressure transducer cost? So that answer varies. The ones that we use ones that are developed by In Situ out of Fort Collins, Colorado. They have the instrument and a data logger and a battery built into it. So it's a little bit more expensive because you can get some that are cheaper, but it's just the instrument. And then you have to run it to the surface and have all that other stuff. So the ones that we use cost about $1,800 a piece. Anything else? Yes, sir.
What's the cost of the well
So the question was, what is the cost to the well owner to be on our monitoring system? At zero cost, absolutely zero. If we are going to put any money into the well, we will enter a contract with the landowner that says that we would be responsible for supplying the equipment that would be going in there. If we need to find out how, so one of the things that I left out, but it's really important, we need to know how deep your well is and where the water level, where it's getting water from before we can even use it as a monitoring well. So if we don't have a well log for it, We have means to go into the well with a camera and figure out where those screen intervals are so that we are able to use that well. We're able to say, all right, look, this water is coming from the Sinsboro, this water is coming from the Queen City. We need to be able to have that information. If we're going to use the well as a monitoring well, the district will cover the expenses to pull a plug, run the camera in, and put the pump back in it. If we are not going to use it as a monitoring well, then that's the owner. We can still come and do that camera survey, but it's up to the owner to pay to remove that pump and put it back on. So that's where some of the cost differences come in. But as far as being in the monitoring network, it's please let us come onto your property and don't point a gun at us when we come out. That's about it. So, yes, sir.
I'll just kind of cover the other side of the coin. Is there any downside to the landowner of letting their well or supporting their well join our well monitoring system? In your personal perspective?
In my personal perspective, knowing the methods that we use, the experience of, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but Sarah will tell you I'm pretty experienced at this and like to brag about myself. But knowing the protocol we use with sanitizing the tape, sanitizing the E-line before we go into that well, the cons are pretty minimal. If I can't think of any right now, I don't see why you wouldn't want to be in the monitoring program. You know what the water level is at your well. We will, on an annual basis, we will do water quality testing for you at the district's expense. The landowner tells us what roads we can and can't use. The landowner gives us a key or doesn't give us a key to their property if they're under a gated entry, and if they want us to come in. A lot of times they'll either give us a key or they'll tell us, call us before you come in and we'll let you on our property. We'll take you out to where you need to be. I promise we don't go driving around people's ranches. We go to the well and we come out. That's all we do. So as far as cons go, the only thing that I can think of, if there's any, and again, I'm not trying to be negative here, but there's always a slight chance every time you open up your well, whether it's us opening it or it's you opening it, and this goes into the maintenance aspect of it, there's always a small chance of contamination. The chance is always there. As much as we sanitize the tape and everything, or try to, every time you open up that well, that chance is there. So with that, I'll throw in that there's always maintenance. I'll let Ralph talk about that because he was a well driller and he knows a little bit more about that. But tell what maintenance.
Well, when you're drilling a well, basically, your driller should use bleach, chlorination. Into the gravel or in their water supply they're using to drill your well. That should knock out any contamination. Drill stems should be chlorinized also because you have that chance of iron bacteria being transmitted across. You just drilled somebody's well, brings it to you. Iron bacteria is a bacteria that can be transmitted just like anything else. So those are the steps that need to be taken when a new well is being drilled. As far as household, there's maintenance that needs to be done. You have your pressure tanks, you have your, I had a friend that had rotten egg smell, didn't have it and it came in. Just asked him, did you bleach your well? Have you chlorinated it? No, not since it was drilled. And sometimes wells will sit there and they'll get that sulfur smell, rotten egg smell. He chlorinated his well and the smell went away. So there's preventive maintenance you can do. So those are just some simple steps you take to maintain your well. And things happen all the time, pressure, your gauges break, you leak, whatever, but chlorination is the main thing. Your well does need chlorination. Most people don't chlorinate their wells once they're drilled. You just run, right? You just want water to come out of the tap. But when you have your own well, there is some maintenance to be done.
Well, obviously, Bobby, a leading question
Correct.
to show that there is such a tremendous value opportunity to participate in the program. And we're really promoting it.
So just say that there is, yes, I mean, the cons are definitely very minimum, the pros are a lot more. And I will say, I will just add this really quickly, I do notice there's some more questions, and I don't know how much more time I've got, looking down here, 5 minutes. I did have one guy, just to put out there, in our monitoring network, that he would leave me chlorine tablets or little chlorine pills, or I guess they were little bleach pills. When he knew I was coming to his well and I was gonna open it, he instructed me, after you're done with your well, please drop these into the well for me. And I mean, that's some of the, because of some of the operations that he ran on his property, nothing illegal or anything. But, that is the precautions that some people do take. And I understand that every time you open that well, there is that slight chance. We take every precaution beforehand to try not to contaminate your well, but I would be lying if I said that chance is zero. So yes sir.
During the early 80s, when the big offshore chalk boom was around here, these oil companies would drill the water wells right and left without permits, and I doubt those logs were ever permitted, ever registered, or ever logged. Now, do you want those wells as part of your monitoring system? I have no idea.
I guess question or statement really was that back in the 80s, 90s, you had a lot of oil and gas activity, and especially in Burleson County. There was some in Milam County as well. With the Austin Chalk exploration, they drilled a lot of rig supply wells, and then they left, and stayed abandoned. Ralph will tell you, we were just driving around the other day, we see them all the time. They are out there. I mean, that's the reason you're asking the question, I'm sure. They are there. A lot of times they'll have a cap on them. A lot of times they're just sitting open, and they still have what we call a jet tube inside of them with a little T coming out, but they're not capped, they're not plugged. The answer to that question is a lot of times the oil and gas companies don't know about them anyway, and they since they're on a landowner, we always think that if that oil and gas company is still in existence, they technically still belong to them. If they don't, they're the responsibility of the landowner. To us, those make perfect monitoring wells because they are, one, they probably don't have a pump in them, and two, a lot of times they're still in good shape because a lot of times they did use steel casing when they made those for some reason instead of PVC. So they're still in good shape for the most part. We can find logs to a lot of them. That doesn't mean there's a lot that we don't, but that possibility is there that there are well logs available. Believe it or not, back in the 80s and 90s, there were some drillers that were adhering to state law. Okay.
If the well is not used except to put water in a pond or whatever, so you don't use it for personal use, do you still want to monitor?
All right, so the question is, if they have a well that they don't use for personal use, I'm going to assume that, but they use it to put in water into a pond, so basically for livestock, because that's what I'm going to assume. The answer is it's still a well, so yes, absolutely.
So shallow or deep doesn't matter?
Shallow or deep doesn't matter. If it comes to you later, I promise I will stick around and I will be here to help answer that. I know it's getting close to 4. I know I promised you I would probably get you out of here early, but I lied. Sorry. I try not to do that too often. But with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our master of the ceremony, the lovely Sarah.